we leave here, and we leave here with a very simple proposal, a method of understanding that is our final and best offer. We'll see if the Iranians accept it.
The United States and Iran have failed to reach a truce deal after high-stakes talks in Islamabad, with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance saying Tehran has refused to accept Washington's terms after 21 hours of negotiations in the Pakistani capital. Now, following the talks, the U.S. has initiated a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz as the Trump administration tries to pressure Tehran into accepting its terms for an end to the war. Now, joining us to unpack this is Dr. Sami Al-Arian, the director of the Center for Islam and Global Affairs at Istanbul Zaim University.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Sami, you've written an opinion piece for Middle East Side that we're going to unpack, but just, off the get-go, what happened? Why did the talks in Islamabad fail? And what are the sources that you have inside the Iranian delegation have been telling you?
Well, let's review how we got there.
Sure.
We got there because the United States was not able to achieve its objectives, and its objectives were basically the Israeli objectives: regime change, the complete dismantlement of the nuclear program, trying to obviously to get all the enriched uranium, 440 kilograms, out of Iran. But more importantly also is to break up or dismantle the alliance between Iran and its different groups, particularly in Palestine, Gaza, in Lebanon, in Iraq, and Yemen. These were the objectives that they were trying to do. And Israel also wanted to, if possible, to degrade the ability of Iran to project any kind of power or even break up the whole country. We started this war. They had a tremendous amount of firepower, and Iran was able to counter this with a horizontal escalation. The American Zionist axis was using what is called vertical escalation, which is a complete destructive force or what they call shock and awe. When they were not able to do that, Iran also employed its nuclear option, which is basically the control of the Strait of Hormuz, which controls 20% of the world's oil. That meant that the global economy could be in jeopardy. The American economy could also implode. All kinds of things that Trump wasn't able to comprehend. And then he started threatening left and right, including the total destruction of what he called Iranian civilization. When he escalated that way and wasn't able to get his way, he opted for negotiations. Let's keep in mind that he was negotiating, I don't know who he was negotiating with, perhaps with himself, with Iranians, and Iranians kept saying there is no channel of communication. And then suddenly we hear about the Islamabad mediator. And I believe these were prompted by Trump himself because he was in a bind, he was in trouble. And then he agreed in a tweet, in a post, that he will go to Islamabad to negotiate with Iran based on the 10-point plan. Remember, the United States had a 15-point plan, which was basically total capitulation, asking for total surrender on the Iranian side, which the Iranians completely ignored and mocked. And the Iranians had their own maximalist position on the 10-point plan. And then suddenly Trump, on the day that he was supposed to bomb and obliterate Iran, he said that he had accepted the 10-point plan and he will negotiate based on the 10-point plan. Not that he accepted all of them, but at least this would be the beginning of the negotiations. Now, what happened there? So what happened there, when Vance came to negotiate, he had with him his Israeli assets, Witkoff and Kushner, and there was no negotiations whatsoever. It was a list of demands based on the 15-point plan, particularly 4 points. And they are in this order. Number one, that Iran has to open the Strait of Hormuz immediately without any conditions, and there will be no tolls or no control. Number two, that they will hand over all enriched uranium, all 440 kilograms, and to be taken, they first asked to be taken to America, but then they said could be taken outside Iran to a place that they can negotiate. And number three, that they have to stop all enrichment, that they will have a zero enrichment, even though enrichment is guaranteed in international treaty, because Iran is a signatory to the NPT treaty. And the NPT treaty allows the country that is signatory to enrich for civilian purposes up to certain points. The Americans said there will be zero enrichment, and they would be willing to provide certain enriched uranium for their civilian use, which has always been the case of Trump and always been rejected by Iran. And number four, that they will break all relations with their allies in the region, what they call proxies, particularly in Gaza, Palestine, in Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen. There was absolutely no change to the conditions that they were sitting before the war, during the war, and right until he accepted the 10-point plan. And when the Iranians asked what were they getting in return, and the answer was that they will unfreeze $27 billion, which are being frozen in several countries, I think about 7 different countries, that they will be given to Iran. And then when the Iranians talked about the primary and secondary sanctions that they have been under now for decades, the Americans said that they will study and review this. And I believe they said that because they were still having one more objective, which is to strip Iran of its missile technology. And they were going to bargain this against the lifting of the sanctions because they want to limit the range by which these missiles can go. They wanted them to be less than the number of kilometers that they would reach the Zionist state.
But
and
Dr. Sami, I do want to ask
that's
you about
about
this.
it. I mean, there was really no negotiation. It was a list of demands that ended with failure.
Great, and I do want to ask you about it, and you've just actually summarized that op-ed piece that I was speaking about. But let's actually talk about the what happened in the aftermath. So Trump has claimed that after the talks failed, that actually most things were agreed to. The only thing was the nuclear issue. Now, does that match what the Iranians are saying?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
One of the conditions, but this is the same condition that they were setting before the war, and they didn't win the war. I mean, they were asking again for capitulation and surrender. This is this fantasy in the mind of Trump and possibly others within his administration that Iran is on its knees. It's supposed to raise the white flag and raise its hands and hand over everything they asked for, which is completely a fantasy and contrary to reality. The reality is that Iran has the upper hand. Iran is able to choke the global economy because of the aggression on it by the American Zionist axis. And it's not going to surrender because Trump said so. And they said, or they claim that they have targeted 13,000 targets in Iran. So Iran has been devastated. There was nothing about, by the way, any kind of reparations or any kind of pay out for Iran after all this devastation. There's still the same demands. And I think this is not going to work. And whatever he's doing now in terms of blockading the Strait of Hormuz is going to just further destroy the global economy, because at one point they agreed to have Iranian oil be lifted so that it can be sold to the world in order to lessen the price of oil. But now, even if they're trying to blockade that, it's going to get worse, not better.
I also want to ask Dr. Sami about the point of view that Iran is possibly winning, or at least that the war is failing against Iran, because there is also another view, as I'm sure you know, that it kind of puts up the question, is the idea of a victory here just the survival of the Iranian government? Because the war has done serious damage to Iran's regional position. I mean, its proxies have been weakened. Its alliances in the region have been strained because of what's been happening in the Gulf in terms of the Iranian attacks. So what would you say to that point moving forward?
I think that's another fantasy. The concept of victory and defeat has to do with the political objectives. If you achieve your political objectives, that's victory. Let's remember that the United States won every battle in Vietnam and lost the war. It won every battle in Afghanistan. It lost the war. It killed over 3 million Vietnamese and it lost the war. It killed millions of Afghans and hundreds of thousands possibly of Iraqis and still lost the war. So that's not how we measure victory and defeat. The United States has particular objectives when it entered this war, it hasn't been able to achieve a single one of them. The missiles are still fly all over the place. In fact, when you look at the American bases in the Middle East, all of them have been damaged. All of them have been out of order. None of them are working today. And when you look at the allies, whether this is a good policy or a bad policy, the allies of the United States are suffering as much as Iran is suffering. Now, the question you need to ask yourself, how can you achieve the goal of either opening the Strait of Hormuz, which was open before the war? So this is a fifth demand now by the United States, in addition to the other four that they were asking before the war. This is either through ground invasion, because you can't do this. You can't really achieve any of these objectives unless you have ground invasion. Now, the United States needed 700,000 soldiers back in 1991 to kick Iraq out of Kuwait. 500,000 were Americans and 200,000 from another 30 countries or so. And then in 2003, it needed almost 300,000 to dislodge Saddam Hussein, to have a regime change in Iraq. Is the United States prepared today to bring 100,000 or 200,000 in a nation of 93 million people with the size of 3 times the size of Iraq? I don't think so. I don't think they have any contemplation of having any kind of grand war. And the other option, obviously, which he has hinted, which is the use of nuclear weapons. And if that happens, we're in a completely different world. I mean, we can't even imagine what kind of world we'll be in if that happens. I don't think it's prepared to do that. Maybe Netanyahu would do that, but they're not prepared to do that. Therefore, if they cannot achieve their political objectives, that means Iran is winning. If it has its own political system intact, if it's able to respond and keep its missile program, its nuclear program, because it's not just about buildings and labs and equipment. It's about knowledge, and it's about resilience. It's about staying the course, and it's about, most importantly, the ability to absorb the pain and have a war of attrition in which the other side will not be able to sustain the pain that it is experiencing. And that's what we have today. I mean, who has the ability? The Iranians had 8 years of war between 80 and 88. And they were able to absorb much pain at the time. It was 500,000 casualties at least. And then we're talking today about the United States being in turmoil because the price of oil today is reaching $4 and $5 and possibly even more per gallon dollars. And that's not going to be easy because there will be political consequences and repercussions. There will be elections at the end of the year, which could actually wipe out the Republican Party if this stays. So who's under more pressure? I think the problem here is that the United States, Trump, is not working for the interest of the United States. He's working with the interest of Israel, and there will be a huge price to pay because that's the case today. So in sum, when you look at all things considered, Iran has the upper hand as of now, despite everything it's doing. And then when you look at the proxies that you mentioned, they haven't been weakened. I mean, today Israel is suffering. They're not obliterated. None of them have been defeated. Hamas has not been defeated. Hezbollah hasn't been defeated. It's actually fighting and putting a lot of effort in damaging the presence of the Israelis in Lebanon. It's the Lebanese government that has been given. It's basically trying to dismantle Hezbollah on the side of the Israelis, and it's going to fail. And when you look at Yemen is still intact. They have the ability to close down the Bab el-Mandab, which will further damage the global economy because 12% of the oil goes from there. So when you look at the overall situation, I think Iran is in a better shape to win this war rather than the U.S. and the Zionist state.
Sure, and what I was saying about the proxies is that they were weakened and not defeated. But let me, while I have you here, Doctor, let me play you a clip. We have a clip from J.D. Vance actually talking about the U.S. blockading the Strait of Hormuz. I'll get you to listen to it, and then we'll come back with a question.
What they have done is engage in this act of economic terrorism against the entire world. They basically threatened any ship that's moving through the Straits of Hormuz. Well, as the President of the United States showed, two can play at that game. And if the Iranians are going to try to engage in economic terrorism, we're going to abide by a simple principle that no Iranian ships are getting out either. We know that's a big deal to them. We know that applies additional economic leverage. And again, Brett,
Now, how effective do you see this action of blockading the Strait, Doctor? And again, this is tied to a view that economic pressure, American economic pressure on Iran can work, that it can eventually force Tehran back to the table.
Again, it's a fantasy because they don't understand Iran. Iran has been under sanctions for 4 decades since the victory of the Islamic Revolution, 47 years of continuous sanctions. There are almost 4,000 laws globally, particularly by the United States, that's putting sanctions on Iran. And the regime has not collapsed. But for them to prevent Iranian oil from coming out of the Strait of Hormuz and thinking this is going to be the leverage by which Iran will give in to them, it's a fantasy, is an illusion. It's not going to happen. Look at what Iran had to endure throughout. Then Iran has other cards. I mean, they can, first of all, the Chinese said today and yesterday that they're going to send their ships and see if the United States and to unload Iranian oil and see why the Chinese are coming out, whether they will be stopped by the Americans and confiscate the oil, the Iranian oil. We'll see if that happens. Let's remember that 60% of Iranian oil goes to China. And it's not only through sea, but also through other means. And then Iran has also other means of delivering their oil. They have actually perfected this because they have been under sanctions for a long time. And then who will have the stamina? Who will have the endurance for this? So let's say, are they willing to stay weeks and months while the global economy is collapsing? I don't think so. I think Iranians have been conditioned that they can suffer and they can actually take that suffering without having to give in, because to them, this is an existential threat. But more importantly, who is actually waging economic terrorism? The vice president's talk about economic terrorism. It's the United States that has been putting sanctions left and right on Iran. That's economic terrorism. They have been preventing medicine and food sometimes and essentials to come to the country. That's economic terrorism. Let's look at what's doing to Cuba. And this is only 90 miles from America. Look at what's happening to Venezuela before they went and snatched its president. These are economic terrorism. The one that is waging economic terrorism throughout the world has been the United States government, and everybody knows that. Nothing is being hidden here. All what they do is use rhetoric to get their way, but this time they have a very formidable nemesis in Iran, and Iran is not going to give in. Iranians are willing to die by the millions before they will give in to the United States.
As an outcome of these talks, one Iranian name has been prevalent in U.S. media reports recently, and it's Mohammad Ghalibaf, who's the Iranian parliamentary speaker. And basically, the Americans were saying that this is someone that they're optimistic and they've placed high hopes in that they can do a deal with. What do you make of that notion, Doctor?
It's a game they play all the time.
It's a game they play.
Yeah, I mean, Ghalibaf was a member of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, whom they hate. He was a leader in that. He is the current parliament speaker. He is obviously he's highly educated and a politician who knows the strategic importance of certain proposals, and he would be able to negotiate based on that. I don't understand under what conditions they start classifying people as being moderate or not non-moderate. I think it's just because they ran out of options, they call him that. Ghalibaf is part and parcel of the regime. Let's remember also that the one that has been more important in terms of the execution of this war has been Muhammad Baqir, not Ghalibaf, but Dhul Qadr, and he was obviously in that delegation. And he has a lot of power. He has the reputation of being extremely hardliner. In fact, in 1999, when he was appointed by the former supreme leader as the number 2 leader within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, Soleimani, who's been looked at as the most radical, resigned because he said, I can't deal with this guy. I cannot work with him. That's how hardliner Zulqadr is. And Zulqadr today is the most powerful person because not only he has replaced Ali Larijani, whom they killed, who was looked at as being the most pragmatic person, who was killed by the Israelis without any objection from the Americans. He replaced him as the Secretary General of the National Security Council, but he's also the Secretary General of the Expediency Council. No one in the history of the Islamic Republic had these two positions combined. That means he's in charge of not only foreign policy, security, and defense policy, but also of domestic policy. That's how powerful that person is. And he is the most radical that they will ever face. And that's because they have killed all the ones that they thought were radicals.
My last question before I let you go, Dr. Sami. There's reports now that talks could resume again between the U.S. and Iran in Pakistan. I mean, can we expect anything to be different this time around?
I mean, we have three possibilities. One possibility is that the United States will realize again that they are out of options, that they cannot force the Islamic Republic, they cannot force Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz. And this is really hurting American economy, global economy, and Trump's polls in the United States. And then they will come and revise the negotiations again. And they are using Islamabad as the venue to do that. And I believe that is a possible option because that's what Trump is. He does not have a strategy. He just flip-flops from one position to another, based on who talks to him last. And in this case, obviously, it's clear that Trump, that Netanyahu has some kind of leverage over Trump. But also the second possibility, in which if we go to that route and they start revising their positions, that will come closer to the Iranians. I think the Iranians are willing to negotiate some sort of freeze on the enrichment, but not to give up this right, and also on some sort of a phased way to deal with the enriched uranium of 60%, either to dilute it or to take it out of the country, possibly to Russia. But I don't think they have that. I think now they're trying to dilute it. And this is a process that will take time, but they're not willing to negotiate their missile program. They're not willing to negotiate the relationship with their allies in the region. They might bring about a proposal in which they would retain some sort of a control over Hormuz. Whether or not the tolls take place depends on whether they're given reparations. If not, this will be the replacement. But that's about it. So if the Americans are willing to accept this kind of a negotiated settlement, then we may have something in the next 3-4 weeks. And if not, then the second scenario would be in which you have a face-off between the two protagonists. And then we'll see who has the ability for more resilience and for more ability to absorb the suffering. And in this case, I think the Iranians will have the upper hand because they still have more cards to play. Not only they are capable of responding, but also you have the Bab el-Mandab as another card that hasn't been played yet. The third scenario, which is the doomsday scenario, in which Trump goes crazy again and they try, with the assistance of the Israelis, go after Iranian facilities, oil facilities, energy facilities, as well as other targets, perhaps power grids and water desalination plants. And in this case, Iran will respond very aggressively and very powerfully against the allies of the United States, against United States ships and Navy vessels, as well as Israel. And then this could really get out of hand, in which it turns into a regional war with grave consequences. So these are the three possibilities. And the one who will be calling the shots on all three would be the Americans. They can choose which route they want. And the Iranians say that they are prepared for each one.
And we're going to leave it here. Dr. Sami Al-Arian, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, sir. I look forward to our next conversation. Thanks for coming on MEELive.